Locked Up, The Wrongful Conviction Files, Episode 4, The Autopsy Report, The Bullet's Final Word. This is Locked Up. The Wrongful Conviction Files. I'm your host, Roger Warstone. In our first episode, or in our first three episodes, we walked through a case that should have been closed, or basically it should have never happened the day it was open, right? We started with a chaotic scene on Christmas Eve of 2003 in Philadelphia, a tragedy that led to a man I call the client being locked up for a crime he says he didn't commit. In that first episode, we saw a case built in assumptions, a car with no link to the accused, and a crime scene that suggested chaos, not a targeted hit. In episode 2, we began to pull at those loose threads of the prosecution's case. We learned that their entire narrative rested on the word of a single witness, J.W., who was already in jail facing a sentence on unrelated charges. His story, a neat and tidy package for the police, was a filmy house of cards. It didn't line up with the timeline, the street code of North Philly, or the statements of other witnesses. It was a story told for a price, a deal for a man desperate for a way out. Then in episode 3, we exposed the most brazen lie of all. The prosecution's case was built in the claim that the client had the murder weapon. But when we looked at the paper, the police affidavits and interviews, the dates, the story, everything fell apart. The gun they claimed was used in the murder was reported stolen 6 days after the crime happened. The timeline was impossible. And when they finally got their hands on a weapon they thought might be the murder gun, they buried the most critical piece of evidence of all, the ballistics test. The one piece of science that could have linked the gun to the crime came back negative. A man is in prison, and the case against him is full of holes, lies, and inconsistencies. But as a detective, I know that paper can lie. Witnesses can lie. But a victim, a body tells the absolute truth. The body has no agenda, no deals, and no fear. In this episode, we're going to dive into the autopsy report. The medical examination performed right here in Philadelphia gives us the final definitive account of how the victim lost his life. We're going to read the story written in blood and tissue, a story that proves beyond any doubt that the client's conviction is based on a fundamental lie. This is locked up. This segment is the autopsy report, the wound that told a lie. The autopsy on the decedent was performed at the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office on December 25, 2003, the day after the murder. The medical examiner's report is a cold clinical document, but it tells a story that screams out from the silence of the file. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a ballistic expert, but I am a detective, and I know how to read the file and connect the dots that were deliberately left unconnected. What I read was not a minor detail, but a crucial fatal flaw in the case against the client. The most important piece of evidence and crucial to this entire investigation was the penetrating gunshot wound to the victim's left back. The position of that bullet is not just a detail, it is the entire key to the case. The wound was located approximately 20 inches below the victim's head and 3 inches to the left of the midline. To truly understand this, I had to physically measure it out on someone's back. When you do that, you get a visceral understanding of just how specific this location is. This wasn't a random stray bullet. This wasn't a shot fired from a distance. The medical examiner described the wound as a double barrel contact gunshot wound. This is a highly technical term that translates to something horrifying simple. The barrel of the gun was pressed directly against the victim's skin when the shot was fired. The report notes soot present in the depth of the wounds, which is an undeniable forensic fact. Soot or gunshot residue gets deposited into the wound only when the gun is direct contact or within inches of the body. This was not a shot from a moving car. This was a point blank, up close shot. The victim was shot in the back from inches away. This single fact, this single undeniable truth unravels the entire prosecution's narrative and exposes it for the fabrication that it is. The story they sold to the jury and the story that put a man in prison is scientifically, physically, and logically impossible. This next segment is the physical impossibility. Let's go back to the prosecution's theory, the one they built on a shaky testimony of a few witnesses. They claimed the client, a right handed individual, was standing on the passenger side of the Oldsmobile, the Alero. His alleged position was outside the vehicle, and he was supposedly shooting into the car as it attempted to drive away. The victim was in the driver's seat. Now, I want you to take a moment and picture this. Try to visualize the scene I've just described. A right handed person standing on the passenger side of a vehicle for a moment. Imagine yourself in that position, holding a weapon. Now try to get the barrel of that weapon to the left side back of the front passengers. To create a contact wound, it is physically impossible. You will have to contort your body in a way that is unnatural. The trajectory, the angle, the simple mechanics of your arm and shoulder, none of it makes sense. The only way to get a contact wound to the left side of a person's back, particularly on the spot described in the autopsy report, is if you were either in the car with them or if you were on the driver's side. The prosecution's theory places the client on the opposite side of the vehicle. This isn't a small detail. This is the entire foundation of their case. It is a lie. The fact that this is not brought up by the client's lawyer or seen by the jury is a testament of how badly the system failed him. It shows that no one, from the detectives to the lawyers, was truly looking for the truth. They were just trying to push a case through. This segment is the cascade of lies. And the lies didn't stop with the physical evidence. They permitted every aspect of this investigation. As a detective, I believe that when one person lies, it causes a chain reaction. A single lie creates a mess, and to cover it up, more lies are needed. And that's exactly what happened here. After JW gave his convenient statement from jail, a whole host of other witnesses began to emerge, each one adding more layers to the fabrication. Victim 3, the driver of the car, had initially told police he didn't see who shot him. But after JW's statement, and a few days later, he suddenly positively identified the client as the gunman. His story, like JW's, was now being molded to fit a narrative that had already been created. Then came the parade of witnesses that made my stomach turn. A witness came forward in April claiming he heard the client admit to the shooting. What was this man's motive? Was he also offer a deal? Then JW's own brother, who had been recently locked up on a forgery charge, gives a statement. He claims he saw the client with a 40 caliber weapon just by looking at it. Something no experienced gun owner will claim to do. He then contradicts his own brother, saying He was the one who was given the gun to get rid of, not JW. These inconsistencies aren't just mistakes, they are evidence of a poorly orchestrated conspiracy. They are sloppy lies told by people who were either desperate to get out of trouble or being fed information. They are mark of a slick and stick job where the goal isn't to find the truth, but to find something, anything that will stick to the wall and just basically get a conviction out of it. And then in May of 2004, the detectives finally get a statement from the client. In a moment of extreme trauma and confusion, his account, while different from what everyone else was saying, contains fragments that coincidentally matches the lies told by JW. He states he had a 40 caliber weapon from the same person JW named. He even mentioned giving it to a particular person. But then he tells a very different story of the shooting. He states he heard a shot coming from the guy by the car and that he returned fire. He said the guys in the car shot at them and he returned fire. The client's statement, while confused, is not a confession. It is confused memory of traumatic event. I describe a chaotic change of gunfire, not a close range murder. This his story, the one that the prosecution is against him, is completely inconsistent with the autopsy's finding. How could he shoot the victim from a distance as the car was taking off and still have a contact wound? It doesn't add up. I want you to understand this. Each witness or every person that was actually there stated that the shooter shot to the Alero after the Alero took off. So if it was the client would have never had a chance to put that gun or that barrel against the back of the decedent because he was far away. The vehicle took off. So if the vehicle took off and he shot, that round never hit him. Understand what the autopsy report says. This segment is the conclusion. The system failed. It failed the client, it failed the victim's family, and it failed the truth. The evidence was there in the file for everyone to see. A point blank contact gunshot wound to the left side of the victim's back. A right handed shooter placed on the passenger side of the car, making the shot physically impossible. A gun that was proven to be unavailable at the time of the murder in a ballistic test that didn't match. A case built on single witnesses who was facing a life sentences and other witnesses whose stories were full of contradictions. Every piece of evidence, every detail, every fact from the crime scene to the autopsy room screams that the client did not commit this murder. A man's life was used as collateral to close a case. The detectives and the prosecution were focused on getting conviction that they ignored the truth, the physical evidence, and the most basic facts. They were too busy to do their jobs and too busy to put their heart into the case that would put an innocent man in jail for life. But I'm not done. There's more to this story. There's more in this file. The autopsy report tells us what the client did not do, but it also hints at what someone else did who was in the car and what were they really hiding. Next time, we'll dive into one story that was never told, the real story of that night, and who really fired that fatal shot. That's next time. Subscribe now because justice starts with a question, and I'm not done asking.